Wait for my thumbs up.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon and welcome to Voices being brought to you by Radio Zindagi. I'm Miss Renu from Genius Kids. Always a pleasure to be here. Favorite time of the week, 12 o'clock. And as you know, Voices is being brought to you by Radio Zindagi. This is a show for the community and by the community. And everybody's been waiting for today's show, and I'm going to tell you why. But before we do that, I want to first begin by thanking Radio Zindagi, Seba, Neeraj, and of course, Ira for always giving us this opportunity to be able to address some very critical topics that affect our community. And today's a very special day. It's the 21st of January, 2021. So happy Thursday to everybody. And I do want to begin because of the topic today that Radio Zindagi has no affiliation to any political group. And our panelists today will be sharing their own personal views. So if anyone wants to participate in the show, if you can do it nicely and politely, that would be great. You can follow us on Facebook. It's being streamed live on Facebook, or listen to us on the radio. And you can post your comments on our page, and we'll be happy to answer any questions or read your comments out, as long as they're nice and polite. And that's very important. And if you want to call into the station, you can call 510-657-1170. So without wasting any time, I'm sure everyone is as excited as I am because we are now under a new administration. We're under the Biden-Harris administration. And today's topic is, what are the challenges that face this new administration? And we have an amazing group today that's going to be sharing their views. So without any further ado, let me begin by introducing our panelists. A very special thank you to the very Honorable Patrick Murphy. He's joined us today. He's a former Undersecretary of the Army, the U.S. Military Academy at West Point. Honorable Murphy was the first veteran of the Iraq War to be elected to the United States House of Representatives, representing Pennsylvania's 8th Congressional District from 2007 to 2011. He's also a former anchor of Taking the Hill on MSNBC. He's currently a senior managing director at Ancora Consulting in Philadelphia and the distinguished chair of innovation at the United States Military Academy at West Point. Welcome to the show, sir. It's a real pleasure to have you.
It's great to be on with you. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you. And then without any further ado, we have my two buddies on the show. And hopefully after today's show, Patrick would also become my buddy as well. And he'll find out how non-political I am and how I just kind of make my way through political shows with my co-host Meera, who will be helping me so I don't mess up. I have with me my friend David Bonaccorsi. He's a civil attorney and former Fremont Council member, an active member of the community. David, as he says in his words, is a cheerleader for all the things in Fremont, and he continues to find ways to serve our community. And I can definitely vouch for that too. Welcome to the show, David.
Good afternoon. This is a wonderful show.
Thank you. And then, of course, we have another buddy of mine, Mukesh Advani. He's an attorney and provides legal services in a wide range of civil litigation matters, including insurance law, employment law, commercial litigation, blah, blah, blah. He's the founder and past president of the original South Asian Bar Association San Francisco, which was the inspiration for formation of dozens of SABA chapters across North America with thousands of members. Welcome to the show, Mukesh.
Thank you very much, Renu, for having me.
And then last but not least, my partner in crime today, who always saves me when I have political discussions because she knows I'm going to goof up. We have with us Meera Kaul. She's a political commentator, author, contributor to Times of India, entrepreneur, and Forbes futurist. She writes about politics, technology, business, law, economy, and futurism. Welcome to the show, Meera.
Thank you so much, Renu, for having me as usual.
It's always a pleasure. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to have a real discussion here. And again, for those who've joined us, this topic today is about the Biden administration. We all know that we have a new president, a new vice president, who I'm extremely excited about because, of course, that's the first woman vice president and a woman of color. So she truly has set the stage for everybody. But they've come into a time where there are a lot of challenging things ahead of them. This is not an easy task. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So and of course, as I mentioned earlier, Meera is going to be co-hosting the show with me. So I'm going to begin by asking everyone this first question. So I'll begin with the Honorable Patrick Murphy. My first question to you, sir, is what do you think, in your opinion, are the top 3 issues that the Biden administration must cover as of right now?
Sure. And so as far as priorities go for the Biden administration, yeah, I mean, we're in the middle of a global pandemic. We just had over 400,000 American that died by that pandemic. And as you know, tens of millions that were infected. So we need to do everything possible to get that under control, to get our economy back in the right trajectory. But I would say his plan, he has a new, obviously, Surgeon General, Vivek Murthy, who's a good friend of mine, who's a great Indian American leader, was a Surgeon General, obviously, under President Obama. But their plan is very clear: 100 million vaccinations in the first 100 days. That is a very robust. That definitely will be a lot more than the Trump administration has done, but definitely needed when you look at there's 330 million Americans, and if we're trying to establish herd immunity before the end of summer, absolutely positively need to hit the ground running. So I think that's the number one priority. But then, of course, you've seen what he's doing with some of the executive orders. Infrastructure is critically important. Raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour. He's done it already, the executive order, with just federal employees, but he wants to do it for the whole country. That has not been raised since I was in Congress 13 years ago, in 2009. So, and then I would say last but not least, when you look at, it has to be a fair economy for everybody. And we can't continue the deficit spending that we're doing for tax breaks for the wealthiest. So, he's been very clear, if for those Americans that make over $400,000 a year, that they're going to have to pay a little bit more of their fair share.
Yes, thank you for that. David, what do you think? What do you think his top three things should be?
No, I absolutely agree. I would say it was going to be COVID. But the last time we were on, we were saying, what should we do? It's really an approach. It's a philosophy. It's federalizing the COVID response. And I had suggested he was going to invoke the Defense Production Act, and he's going to do that in the next couple of days to amp up the supplies, amp up the PPE. It's a full court press. We haven't had that. But he's also said, I think he has 4 priorities. One of them is racial justice. He's not going to forget that, and be important with Meera Kaul as the new Attorney General, taking a clean canvas to looking how we deal with prosecutions in this country. And so he's got a very heavy agenda dealing with immigration. He just introduced language today. Instead of using the word alien, he's going to try to delete that and put in the word non-citizen. So we need to treat people with dignity, DACA, bring our children into full citizenship and a path to citizenship for everyone else that's been here for a number of years and earned it. So it's very exciting.
Thank you for that. Mukesh, your thoughts?
Well, David stole my words. I was going to say COVID. You talk about priorities. I think that should be the main and the chief priority, because we have 400,000 people dead, and we still don't have a complete natural flow of PPEs, and of course vaccination is a mess. So I think this has to be addressed on a war footing, right? Like you're in World War III, because our whole country is dependent upon addressing the COVID pandemic that we have. So I think did he not already invoke the Defense Production Act? If he hasn't done that, he needs to do that immediately. I thought he did that yesterday. And I think 100 million doses in first 100 days I think that number is not large enough. I think that number should be larger, and it should be manageable, because you're talking about, you can easily vaccinate countrywide a couple of million people a day once it gets going. And I think one of the other issues is that evictions. So the economy, people don't have money to pay the rent. So the evictions have to stop. But with that, there has to be some measure of relief for the landlords. Most of the landlords are small time. They are not like, huge multimillionaires who have thousands of apartments and stuff. They're mom and pop people. They need to make their mortgage payment. They have to pay taxes. And if they're not taken care of, then their houses are going to go in foreclosure. With that, we need the $1.9 trillion stimulus package he has, because the small businesses have to be kept in business. And of course, with that, we need to put money immediately in the pocket of people. Now, they're all related to COVID. And I think the other thing is, which is very important, obviously, immediately, is to kind of try to restore our international reputation. And at least, we see these celebrations going on all over the world. I mean, if you look at the world newspapers, right? Everyone is excited about this,
Correct.
about the change that has happened, except maybe Putin or Xi or his buddy in North Korea. So these, I would say, are like the most important things that he needs to take care of this week.
Thank you. Thank you for that. And Meera.
So I think a lot of these things are so interconnected that if we attack one, we will have to attack a few others. For example, COVID is, of course, very important, but COVID response cannot happen if there is no economic recovery, right? These are interconnected. They are not separate from each other. So in terms of COVID response, I'm pretty sure the team that he has with Surgeon General Vivek Murthy and, of course, Ron Klein, who led the Ebola response earlier, they know what they're doing. It is a huge effort to bring 100 million doses in the first 100 days because, of course, there is no federal stockpile. There are supply chain issues. There's not enough production and manufacturing of PPE. And then with all of that, the Buy America Act. So I think unless we kickstart the supply chain aspect of things, we cannot deliver the 100 million vaccinations. And even if we do deliver 100 million vaccinations, it will take us till around summer 2022, and that's the expectation that everybody will be vaccinated. Then, of course, with the new strains of the virus, what impact that would have on the program. We'd also, of course, we'll need to invest in a lot more development with the WHO. CDC has to take away all the falsehoods that it was asked to generate. So there's so much cleaning up to be done in this entire arena between economic recovery and COVID that it will impact trade, it will impact relationship with other countries, it will impact supply chain in a very big way. So I think those should be the priorities right away, keeping in mind that we have to save people.
Thank you. So one of the questions, Mr. Murphy, Honorable Patrick Murphy, one of the questions is the H-1B drama. Trump extended the June 2020 travel ban on the new H-1B and the L-1 workers and the April 2020 ban on almost all permanent immigrant categories. So will these bans be overturned? And what do you think the incoming administration thinks about all of this? Because a lot of people are concerned.
Of course. Well, listen, President Biden has promised to expand temporary work visas and employment-based immigration. He wants to streamline, frankly, the processing for religious worker visas. But on his first day in office yesterday, he has paused the following immigration rules that President Trump tried to emulate his predecessor. One, replacing the HB1 lottery program, H1B lottery program with the selection process based on salary. Two, the final wage rule, which he has sought to hike wages across all skill levels in a phased manner. And three, requiring IT service companies to file H1B applications for their employees. So I think that's a pretty strong first day, but there's no doubt that he believes that, we're a nation of immigrants and that we only took in last year about half of what we took on traditionally. And that hurts America at its core because, the very fabric of our being is that we're a very entrepreneurial country, that we have the number one economy and the number one military in the world, but it's that economy that's driven by innovation. And not just innovation, with all due respect to my good friend Meera, who I love, not just the innovation that we see in Silicon Valley, but all across the great heartland of America.
Thank you. So, one of my questions is to all of you is that, it's, and again, I do want to remind everyone that Radio Zindagi has no political affiliation and we're all, making our own comments and personal views. So these are also my personal views. We know that our past president has left a mess and there are a lot of challenges here. And still there were over 73 million people that voted for him. So my question to all of you is, what do you think some of the challenges are going to be? Because many of us celebrated the inauguration yesterday, but there are probably quite a few that did not. David, I'll pose that question to you first.
Well, I think that his inaugural speech yesterday was pitch perfect. Talking about unity. And I think in this country, there's probably of the Trump supporters, I would say maybe there's 55 to 60% that will always be, attracted to Trumpism, attracted to white nationalism, unfortunately. But that leaves 40% of Republicans and a wide swath of independents that are out there. That's actually the largest component in the country, more so than Democrats and Republicans as far as registration. So I think by accomplishing success early on COVID, getting the economy going, I think that will draw a consensus, a new coalition, and put pressure on moderate Republicans to be part of the solution rather than part of the problem.
Mukesh, what are your thoughts? What do you think are going to be some of the biggest challenges that the team faces right now?
Well, I mean, I think the biggest challenge is that Trump has left everything in such a mess, right? After the election was decided, he started setting fires, in every department and putting his cronies, people who are completely unqualified, like the Patel guy in the Defense Department, that that will take some time, and I can assure you that there are people in the transition team who are working on that. That's why, if you saw, he had a stack of executive orders lying on his desk yesterday that he was signing one after another. So I think that would be the biggest challenge that he's going to face, and I still believe that he is going to get a lot of resistance in the Senate in terms of enacting any of his policies. A lot of them require 60 votes. So you can just do it by simple majority. So they're going to McConnell is not going to change overnight. So I think he's going to continue to create those problems. And I think the other bigger problem he's going to have is from the progressive wing of his own party as we move forward, because they're going to put pressure on him to enact policies that are actually not overall good for the country and not going to be accepted by the people. And we're going to get a blowback in 2022 in terms of losing control of the House and the Senate. So I think he has to balance all of that. In a way, it's good that the Senate is 50-50 split because they are not going to be able to progressive wing. I'm nothing against them. And I think their environmental agenda is great. I think environmental agenda, if you throw in a couple of $1 trillion with it, it's going to create millions of new well-paying jobs. So all of that is good. I want that. The infrastructure, right? I mean,
right.
You drive around anywhere in the Bay Area where we live, you've seen the conditions of the bridges and the roads and streets. I think right now he has a mandate because the former president didn't do anything. He has a mandate to do all of that and to spend a lot of money, which is going to create lots of new jobs and good jobs. And I think overall, eventually, like David said, it's going to appease even the Republicans because now they have jobs, which they, some of them didn't have yesterday. And by putting money in their pockets, I think he can appease large number of those crowds. But like David said, the 50-60% of those, there's nothing you can do that will, change their mind. But like also David said, there are only 28% of people who are registered Republicans in the country, and the rest of them are not. So he's got challenges, and I would say he's got a lot of opportunities to do things that haven't been done. So I think it has been set up for him. And one thing I like to add is that, when Obama became president, he inherited a bloody mess of an economy. Okay. What Biden and Harris have is not only the worst economy like it was 8 years when Obama first became president, but we got a pandemic that is raging out of control. So his challenges are bigger. But when I look at his team, it gives me a lot of hope and optimism because these are really exceptional people.
Correct. So Meera, I know that one of the big topics you wanted to talk about today was the foreign policy. So I'm going to turn this over to you now because this is your part. So go ahead.
So, of course, foreign policy is a passion of mine. And I wanted to start with, of course, Honorable Patrick Murphy. Sorry. I think I'll have to call you by your
Sorry, come on, get out of here.
Yeah. All right, Pat, I'm not going to make the drama happen. But foreign policy has been a mess, and you and I have both spoken about it in a lot of chats. And it's messier now because the world has changed in the last 4 years. The dynamics of the world has changed. It's a fast-moving pace, and all of a sudden we have competition in the world, and that is China. And this acrimonious tiff on trade with China and anti-China stance may not have worked very well with us, because China, on the other hand, with its Belt and Road, has done exceptionally well in countries by loaning them money and really owning that infrastructure. Having said that, a lot of voters, when they went to polls, for them foreign policy was a big issue. How South Asia will get treated by the Biden administration. And of course, when I say South Asia, that entire India-Pakistan dynamics, and of course China is a big part of the dynamics right now, with India and China being at war for a long time, and now for over a year. But also the power play between these three nuclear powers in that region. And when a lot of voters went to polls this time, they felt that the Biden administration was going to be soft on these issues. And I'm pretty sure you know that that's not the case. And you know that out of the number of drone strikes that have happened on Pakistan over the last few years, the maximum happened during the Biden administration, and practically zero happened during the Trump administration. So having said that, what do you think? What do you think the foreign policy initiatives are going to be?
Well, first off, it's America at its best, at her best, and that's as a reluctant warrior. And even a symbol of America is with that eagle with two talons. One talon holding the olive branch, the other talon holding the 13 arrows, signifying our first 13 colonies, but also our military might. But no doubt. I mean, you're seeing him reaching out already to the rest of the world. And frankly, you're seeing the rest of the world reach out to Joe Biden. And why is that? Because on day one, yesterday and today, we rejoined the Paris Accords. We also joined the World Health Organization. And part of that is because there's a certain level of trust and confidence in Joe Biden as commander-in-chief, that he will do what's necessary to protect our families, to protect our allies, and to stand shoulder to shoulder with them. But let's be very clear, it is the economic and military might that, when you partner with allies, makes everybody stronger. As the great founding father, one of the founding fathers, Ben Franklin, once said, if we don't hang together, we will hang separately. So, I was very excited. Even Prime Minister Modi, reached out and on Twitter and talked about how he's looking forward to working with them. And I think even the U.S.-India partnership, as you mentioned, it's based on shared values. It's not just because it's economic interest. It's shared values in democracies and people, who are there to represent the best of the world and the best of humankind.
What about Afghanistan? Do you agree with this entire premise? And you know this better than I don't know anybody else who know this entire thing as well as as well as anybody who with common knowledge does. But what about Afghanistan? Do you think we're in the right by reducing our forces there at a time when they need us the most?
Well, what I do know is that we still have several thousand troops there, and we have the Secretary of Defense, the nominee, Lloyd Austin, who I served in Iraq with, who I've known, who's led through every echelon of our military: company command, battalion command, brigade command, division command, corps command. Was the vice chief of staff of the Army in the Pentagon. My point, though, is he is not on the job yet. He's going to give his best military right and execute, and he has said just in yesterday's testimony to the Senate and he's talking to the House of Representatives right now, that he's going to relook at Afghanistan and give his best advice to Joe Biden, no matter what. We're in the middle of peace talks, with the Taliban, but the reality of it is that we need to make sure that we hold them and others accountable. And I think that has not been there in years past, and we need to put an end to it.
Perfect. And Raina, you want to take over the next one?
Yeah. So David, I know you had a question for Honorable Patrick Murphy. What was your question for him?
My question is going back to January 6th. We haven't talked about it, but that horrible invasion insurrection at the Capitol. The reports are that they were begging President Trump to release the National Guard. He didn't do it. Secretary of the Army is saying, I'm not getting the authority from the president. The vice president apparently stepped in. Since you were in the Obama administration, understand chain of command, what can you add to that? What have you heard? If you have any contacts, was there a usurpation of the chain of command to get Pence to do the right thing to save the Capitol that day?
Yeah, so, although I teach at West Point and I'm in DC with it's called the U.S. Cyberspace Slam Commission and two other things, I'm not privy to that decision in the Pentagon. I know what I read in newspapers and they're looking at what happened and there's going to be a report exactly how it went down. But the reality of it is, and we cannot highlight it enough, it was domestic terrorism in our country. And there was many political leaders who incited that violence. People like Rudy Giuliani, who said specifically, we need trial by combat.
Mm-hmm.
And so we know that there was 5 that were left dead. We know members of Congress put their lives on the line. And fortunately, after they escorted those rioters, those terrorists out of the Capitol, those members of Congress went back and did the right thing, and democracy prevailed. But it's my understanding that Vice President Pence, who is an Army veteran, reached out and made sure that the National Guard could be activated. Too late, many of us would say, but it still happened, and that was a good thing.
Wouldn't that be outside the chain of command, though? Isn't that the president's call? And so that was an extraordinary use of power. Glad he used it, but I'd be curious if that's.
Well, again, David, I would just say to you again, I'm not privy exactly how it went down. Maybe he had the acknowledgement that he had the authority by the president to make the call. I was not in the Oval Office or in the Pentagon, when those calls were being made. But clearly, there's a lot of constitutional questions that, as someone who taught constitutional law at West Point for years and loves the Constitution, there's clearly some constitutional issues that have to be addressed. And remember, the Secretary of the Army is really like the governor of DC in that he or she controls the National Guard for the District of Columbia. And albeit they were mobilized, but not until after the fact.
Sorry, go ahead, Meera. No, go ahead.
Given the entire scenario, there was a connected question that I wanted to put out to the entire panel, and that's about misinformation networks. And of course, our big tech platforms, which are all California-based, by the way, have a big role to play in this entire 5 years of perpetration of unadulterated information that wasn't generally rooted in reality. So let's start with David and then Mukesh and then, of course, Pat. Could we talk a little bit more about this entire misinformation problem, and how do you think the Biden administration should go ahead and combat it?
Well, first, I want to clear up a misconception that I think a lot of people have. I also am a great ardent lover of our Constitution.
Could you come a little closer? We can't hear you. Yes.
Yeah, I think one misconception I want to dispel is that we got to start with the premise that there is no First Amendment right to the use of Twitter or other private forums. So any kind of regulation there is room for regulation, but I do think that we do need to get buy-in from Facebook, Google, and Twitter. We don't need Jack Dorsey making individual decisions when to have somebody on or off. I think absolutely he made the right call in at least banning Trump for the last couple of weeks of his administration, because he was a clear and present danger. And was saying, for example, I'm not going to be at the inauguration, which may have been a signal to the 3%ers and the right-wing militia that, hey, look, there's a safe target out there. They're not going to hit Trump. So there's some real, I think we should all watch Social Dilemma. There was a guy that was formerly with Google that's suggesting the equivalent of a constitutional convention for our social media platforms to develop rules of the road, have objective standards that apply across all of these platforms. We used to have licensing rules for television stations that would have the fairness doctrine. There were other ways that we used to regulate. So there may be some angles that we can tackle legislatively, but I think there absolutely has to be some buy-in from the high-tech industries because they've profited off the misinformation that's out there.
Ready, if I could jump in, if that's okay,
Yes,
if
of
you don't
course.
mind, because I know I told you I have to take off in just a little bit, and I love
Oh,
talking
good.
about
Good.
this.
Well,
If it's okay, I want to highlight what David said. Let's just step back. The Constitution is a blueprint of our country. The Constitution, especially the Bill of Rights, the first 10 amendments of the Constitution, including, the most importantly, the First Amendment. The First Amendment gives us lots of rights in America, including the right to free speech. But all speech is protected. All speech is protected, except FIDO, the mnemonic FIDO. This is what I used to tell my cadets at West Point when I taught this: fighting words, incitement to riot, defamation of character, and obscenities.
Good.
So that is not protected speech in America, and it has been very clear. And Joe Biden says he has called for Section 230, which David referenced, to be revoked. And it appears that there's currently bipartisan support for curtailing the tech industry, and that's not going to go away, with this new administration. And Democrats, and specifically President Biden, Democrats now control the House and the Senate, but they don't believe that social media platforms have restricted or removed enough harmful content, including, frankly, hate speech and especially misinformation. And it is these social media platforms, Facebook, Twitter, etc., that have, in the Mueller report, again, I serve on this U.S. Cyberspace Land Commission. The Russian information operations that they conducted 4 years ago was the worst we've seen in world history, and it affected that. And again, they're dividing our country. They are pushing stuff out to certain segments of our society to push them with falsehoods and misinformation. The tech companies have to do a better job of regulating that. They haven't done enough, and I think that's going to be a massive change. And that's why I appreciate you having me on to talk about it. You and all the followers, I'm on social media talking about this. My hashtag is @PatrickMurphyPA. And that's Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, etc. @PatrickMurphyPA. But listen, I appreciate these are such incredibly important topics. I wish I could stay,
Yes.
but I told you I had another commitment that I had previously.
No problem. You have to leave right now, sir?
I do.
Okay, but I do want to thank you again on behalf of Radio Zindagi. It's been a pleasure. We hope to bring you back to the show. I'm sure the show is going to need a sequel to it. So it's
I
been a
hope you
real
do,
honor.
because we have our token Irish American politician in the era of Biden. So a congressman from near Scranton. So that's great.
Which,
Absolutely.
by the way, can I just mention? I mentioned the budget earlier, real quick, and I mentioned my good friend Vivek Murthy, but also Neera Tanden. I worked with her. I was a senior fellow at the Center for American Progress. She is nominated to be in the cabinet as the OMB, Office of Management Budget, where Colin Powell, by the way, worked at as a White House fellow when he was an Army officer. But that OMB is incredibly important, especially when we look at America that is $27 trillion in debt, that every American owes $83,000 to our national debt. A lot because of the wealthy tax breaks, and we're not getting our fiscal house in order. And that's going to be a tall task. It's one of another massive challenges that we need to do. We need to make sure that we grow ourselves out of this economy first, though, out of obviously the pandemic and what's going on. So we're going to see that, but then there are going to be some tightening of the belts at the federal level. So thank you so much.
No, thank you.
Wonderful.
Thank you. We
Having
hope
me.
to see you
All
back
right.
soon. Thank you so much. Yes.
All right.
And
See
for
ya.
those who've tuned in, this is Voices being brought to you by Radio Zindagi. And the topic today is the Biden administration and what are the challenges. And so, Mukesh, your thoughts about the prior question.
Yeah, so I am a big believer in the First Amendment rights, and in fact, I don't think there's any amendment in any fundamental right which is more important than the First Amendment. Because it's really essential for the press, for the democracy, to function smoothly, to there be a free flow of ideas. But I think there has to be some responsibility associated with that. And what has happened in the last 5 years, especially with Facebook, okay, that you can post any content on it, and you got immunity from doing that because of that statute that exists. I think these people are making billions and billions of dollars. All right, all of them, all the social media platforms need to be accountable. All right, I'm not saying they sit in the censor and decide what should be there and what should not be there, but there are things which are obvious incitements, there are obvious lies, sun rises from the west, those types of facts, that they need to kind of catch it, and they have or should have the technology to do that. And, I have seen many of my posts were removed, and I can be very aggressive, but I'm not really using offensive language. So they have the technology to do that, and we had it all along, and they have to act more responsibly, like Twitter and Facebook did recently. All right, to weed out a lot of this stuff. Obvious lies, obvious incitement to violence. Kill so and so. Let's hang Mike Pence for confirming the process, which is laid out in the Constitution. Those types of things, there need to be, there needs to be what Twitter started doing actually months ago. They started posting that this is a lie. All the posts Trump had, anytime he lied, they would, challenge him on that. And I think there has to be some laws, or they should do it voluntarily or legally, requiring them to do that. And they have this immunity, which, I'm not saying it's not a good thing, because that is what kind of gave birth to the internet, right? I mean, the freedom to have it. And I want them to prosper and progress, but it should come with responsibility.
I totally agree with you over there. I think there needs to be an amendment to Section 230, and I think that is on Biden's agenda. But I believe it's going to be a much more constitutionally democratic process where they bring in the tech platforms and they ask them, how can we monitor you? How do you want to get regulated in a way that, of course, everybody can go onto these platforms and say whatever they wish to say, but it needs to be correct. It needs to be factually correct. And I think that'll be a big improvement, not only in the quality of our democracy, but also it will be, when a democratic process succeeds in America, it becomes an example of democracy succeeding elsewhere in the world as well. And the world is looking at us today to see how we execute this.
So this leads me to the question that I'm wondering. Everybody, I think, is wondering: is Trump going to be impeached? And do you think this impeachment is going to take the attention away from the administration, from their agenda? So I'll start with you, Meera.
I definitely think that there is a strong case, though we have no information on how the Republicans are going to deal with this. But I see a lot of softening within the Republicans, for example, the ones who were inciting this entire process of invalidating the elections are now coming back and saying, oh, we never said it, like Mr. McCarthy from California early morning today. He completely turned around his view to say he never said anything against the fact that the elections were fake or the elections weren't properly conducted. Well, having said that, I think there needs to be accountability, and accountability is extremely important in a democracy. People who think they can get away with a lot of things, including the 150 odd people who were given who were given a free ride by Mr. Trump before he left. I believe that repercussions must exist, and I'm hoping that the democracy prevails in that case as well, because there's no democracy without accountability.
So actually, we have a question from one of our listeners. I'd like to pose that in right now, and I'll pose that question to you, David, as we move on, and then we can get back to the question I asked Meera. The question is, President Biden says he needs each and every one of us to get America back into shape. What do you think people need to do to support him, David, for all our listeners out there?
Well, I think that what he said yesterday was the guidepost, which is that we respect dissent, but we listen to each other, and that we respect one another's opinions, even if disagreement. But there are certain guardrails. You can dissent, you can vote for whomever you want, you just don't ransack the Capitol. So I think these are really low bars, but we've got to start all over again, and it's generational. We have to
Correct.
have civics back in our high school. We have to re-educate, and I don't want to sound, that's a terrible sounding word from the communist era, but we have to re-educate in our freedoms and really the responsibilities that go with that. And I think that what we do is that we can form community around COVID. I think there could be a bipartisan or nonpartisan consensus that we don't want people to die, right? And if you reframe the issue and saying, how can you help in your community? How can you help with the federal mask mandate that he has on federal property? Model that behavior. It's no longer a political issue. I think once we get it detoxified, people can approach it as a health issue that it is. So these are the kinds of things incrementally. It's not going to happen overnight, but incrementally, this is the way we can get in shape, as your viewer says.
Well, I can definitely say that there was a big change when the new administration came in, because we finally heard the word we instead of I. So that was a good start right there. Mukesh, your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree with David. And I think one of the most important thing we have to do, or the most important thing we have to do, is to get COVID under control. And what we've been talking about, in terms of wearing masks and social distancing and washing your hands and stuff. So if people you want to help out, that's one way to do it. And to my South Asian friends, particularly, stop having those Diwali and Holi and Thanksgiving get-togethers. I live in San Ramon, and during Diwali time, I saw all these events going on in my neighborhood.
Wow.
And then I found out a few days later that San Ramon has the highest incident of COVID cases in entire Contra Costa County. And I don't think it's unrelated to the Diwali parties and Thanksgiving get-togethers that I saw in my neighborhood. So act responsibly. Stop having that. We are like a 3 months away from getting it under control. So let's stop killing people. I mean, we are doing it to ourselves. You can blame. I was blaming Trump all along, and I still do, for what he did. But we are responsible too. I haven't been to a party in a year. I haven't seen a friend in a year. I don't go out in any events where there are multiple people and who can infect one another. I have not been to one. So if I can do that, and I'm a very social animal, if anyone knows me, if I can do it, so can you.
Absolutely.
Renu, can I answer your question on the impeachment issue?
Yes, of course.
Oh,
go
beautiful.
Ahead.
Yeah, I think that impeachment, of course, is political. I think that the one article that the House came up with, all you need, in my view, is the speech he gave. He's standing next to Giuliani, trial by combat, that Patrick Murphy referred to, and he had the tweet in advance, it's going to be wild. Right. So he assembled, as Liz Cheney's statement was brilliant, he assembled the mob, and then he lit the match that day. That's enough for me. But I would be one of the 50 senators as a Democrat. We need to get to 67. What is that bridge? Because I really do think we need to hold him accountable. And I think Angus King, who's an independent from Maine, set that metric up. Two things. One, what was the intelligence that he had? Did he definitively know going into that rally that the militia types that were going to bring arms and going to ransack the Capitol? If he proved that, it's hard for anybody to say no. And the second part, independently of that, and Patrick was, I think, appropriately not going to speculate, but I do think we can establish that he was just watching TV on Fox and getting his, enjoying the chaos that he had created. That alone, had he not done anything else besides his speech, that alone goes well beyond a dereliction of duty and really ratification of the whole insurrection. So those are the two elements. And if it takes a month for us to get that evidence, then I'd rather have the trial a month from now. Although I think the impetus is to do it sooner, because you don't want to, unfortunately, slow down the Biden cabinet picks and his legislation. But I think it's more important for the historical record to do it right. And I would rather defer it until we have that evidence than do it too soon and have it just tossed aside.
Did you want to put Mukesh, did you want to say anything about impeachment?
Yeah, I think David is right. I mean, he's guilty as sin. There's no question about that. Now, the question is, are we going to have 67 senators to vote for it? And I think it really depends on Mitch McConnell. If he wants to purge his party of Trump, there are going to be 67 votes. So it's all about Mitch McConnell, even now that he's not a majority leader. he can make it happen. And all the noises he's been making and holding Trump personally responsible for what happened, and making statements like, he provoked it and all that. I think, that's where his head is right now.
Thank you.
So,
Thank you.
I think there's a pretty good chance that it would happen.
So we have a few more minutes before we wrap up our show, about 10 minutes. So I want to kind of wrap it up on this little bit of a lighter note. And so I would love to know, sorry?
You got a dance performance?
I don't have a dance performance, but I can find one about our past president and post that on Facebook if you like. But I'd love to know from everybody. I know I got myself into some trouble yesterday. I'd like to know from everybody, how did you feel about this inauguration yesterday? Because, the whole world was on fire. At least for me, it was the whole world on fire. So, Meera, I'll start with you.
Well, I feel as if I'm coming out of a highly traumatic relationship after 5 years, and I loved it. Look at the quality of that entire concert in the evening. It was so beautifully put together. I mean, please, let's just do our inaugurations like this in the future, because this was so inclusive, so beautiful. This is America, for God's sake, and it was up for the world to see that America is back. And I loved it. I absolutely loved it.
David?
Oh, I watched for 12 hours. And it was
You didn't go to work yesterday?
I didn't go to work yesterday. Sorry, Renu. If there was anything I forgot to do, I apologize. But I didn't go to work yesterday because I just looked at the inaugural speech and I got hooked. I wanted to see the next thing. I wanted to see him go to the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. I had never seen because it's usually a luncheon off from the cameras. They didn't have a luncheon yesterday, but the gifts that were given by the Senate Majority Leader and the Senate Minority Leader and the Speaker Pelosi and McCarthy, that was beautiful all day. And then we finally and then we saw Biden get out and walk to the White House at the end of the day, and just this sense of relief and joy. And then I saw a tweet, and if you see my Facebook post, I was chronicling it the whole day because there were just so many things, and we led into the concert at the end of the day. But one Twitter, I don't know the guy on Twitter, he says, I watched for 12 hours because it was an exorcism. He wanted to expiate the years of Trump, abusive relationship. So I think it was both exorcism for me and exhilaration for me. So the pure release, and then having Bon Jovi do the cover song of the Beatles, "Here Comes the Sun," having the Foo Fighters, having the Boss, Bruce Springsteen, and that beautiful imagery of John Legend, playing in front of the Lincoln Memorial.
That was beautiful.
Boy.
Beautiful.
And then you saw all of the reflection pool of the Lincoln Memorial all over the Washington Monument, where they had laid out all of those candles and remembrance of those that we've lost that they had honored the day before. I'm macho, so I said everybody else was crying. I wasn't crying. Okay, just to let you know, for the record, I wasn't crying at all.
Mukesh, and while we're answering this question, Mukesh, of course, it's appropriate to talk about our Vice President Kamala Harris, of course, especially now that, she is a woman of color. I'd love to hear everybody's points as we wrap up in our last 5 minutes. So Mukesh, your inauguration.
All right, so let me tell you a secret. I have never, ever, until yesterday, watched anything inauguration related. I watched Obama's speech when he first became president. And I've seen presidents being sworn in, like I remember Bill Clinton being sworn in, but I've never really watched anything inauguration related ever. It was not important enough. Obviously, I wasn't going to watch Trump's inauguration, but I've never watched anybody else's either. So it was very thrilling. And the program they had in the 19th evening was very exciting. I spent 3-4 hours yesterday with my daughters, who, by the way, went to Genius Kids for how many years? 6-7 years.
Yes.
And that is still their favorite place. And I say, do you rather go back to school at Genius Kids or rather go back to Genius Kids? All right. So that's the plug. Now, what is really exciting and thrilling for me is to have known Kamala since the time we both practiced in San Francisco, right? She was the DA And that was the time when I was forming South Asian Bar Association. And then in connection with that, I met with her. That was like talking about 1990s, like
Wow.
almost 25 to 30 years ago. That's when we first met. And so for me, her being a woman, being Indian American woman in part, and African American, then all of those things are very thrilling and very exciting. And the reason I particularly like Kamala is because she is so exceptionally competent, because I have interacted with her on a personal and professional level. She is exceptional. There are people, when she was district attorney in San Francisco, there were people, and she was in charge of all the felony, all the murder trials, homicide trials. People will watch, she was young, like maybe around 30. People would go inside the court and sit there and watch her, try cases. So to me, as a South Asian and a founder of South Asian Bar Association, and having an attorney who's South Asian is very thrilling. And one other thing I like to add, the South Asian Bar Association, which now has like 30 chapters, more than 15,000 members, the one that I started in San Francisco almost 30 years ago now, almost 28, we were the first ones to endorse her when she first ran for our office for district attorney. Okay, I wasn't the president then. But as I walked in where our convention was going to be, I saw her, and she ran to me and she announced that I'd just been endorsed by South Asian Bar Association. That was the first organization to endorse her. A little bit of history there.
Good
Goes
for
back
you.
28 years, but
Wonderful.
there you have it.
Absolutely. Meera, how do you feel? I know it's women empowerment, but what do you think?
So I met her, of course, when she was running for senator at California. But there's one very important aspect of her personality that I believe that a lot of people can see. They will see it on display now that she's vice president, and that is the fact that she's bold and she's so honest and sincere to what she does. And I think that in a lot of ways complements what Joe Biden brings to the table: honesty, authenticity, and compassion. So apart from the fact that she is professionally so competent, there are other aspects of it: being a woman of color, being a woman in the highest office in this country. This woman has achieved so much, and she stands on the shoulders of so many women that made it possible for a woman to be in office. And this woman is going to be the reason why so many other girls and women of color are going to really think that their lives are going to be boundaryless from now on. And that is the biggest gift that she's given to this country.
Thank you. Thank you for that. And it's time for us to wrap up. And for all those who've tuned in, this was Voices being brought to you by Radio Zindagi. We had an amazing panelist today. And one of our guests, Honorary Patrick J. Murphy, who is a Senior Managing Director at Ancura Consulting in Philadelphia and the Distinguished Chair of Innovation at the United States Military Academy at West Point. And he was the former Undersecretary of the Army, was with us today. So if you missed that part of the show or missed any part of the show, it's on our Radio Zindagi Facebook page. Don't forget to watch it. It'll be there. And I know there's going to be a lot more sequels to this show. And again, it's always an honor and a pleasure to host this show when I have such an easy panelist that carries the discussion for me, because for those who know me, I know nothing about politics at all. And Sepa always worries when she puts me in the show, but she puts me in the good hands of Meera Kaul. So thank you, Meera, for co-hosting with me. Thank you, Mukesh Advani, for always putting the plug for Genius Kids. You always make me feel very old, but it was an honor to teach your children. And I hope one day you can come on the show and say, I'm teaching your grandkids as well. And of course, David, you're my favorite attorney in town. I never say that to anybody. You've always been there for me. So thank you so much, and have a great Thursday. And truly, we have a lot of things forward to look after and look forward to in the next few weeks. So everybody needs to get those vaccinations. That's what we need to remember.
All right.
Absolutely.
All right.
Thank you.
Take care, and thank you so much. And back to you, Radio Zindagi. Thank you so much.